As of last check, the astronomical and meteorological seasons have turned to fall, yet we're looking at temperatures into the 90s as far north as almost to Canada, with a new heat dome building over portions of not only the central part of the country, but as well as towards the east. Eventual moisture surges are coming with that system as well, and that could help to fire off some storms down the line. I've got all the details you need to know in this video, so go ahead and like and subscribe. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start with a mid-level anomaly walkthrough. This is 500 millibars. This is mid to upper levels to be exact, with a heat dome beginning to build into portions of northeastern Canada. You can see the high pressure there. And then we've got this cool down / low pressure system coming out of western Canada and entering the west coast part of our country. You can see it there. I'm circling it with my cursor. But really, it's the piece at the southern end of that high pressure system that's in northeastern Canada that's going to start to build and form a new one here over portions of the central part of our country. And then here you can go and see how this is really going to turn as we head towards the first day of October. This is your Sunday, October 1st. Just really a big developing dome at this point over portions of the north central United States. And notice how that gradually shifts east, but with no hurry in mind as it does so, with that low pressure system riding its heels, but really falling apart as it does so. So this is really what the pattern is going to look like every other day with this system. Let's start for Friday, September 29th. Again, a strengthening high pressure system over the central United States with a low pressure system on the west coast. Both systems intensify, but really remain in their overall locations as we head towards your Sunday, October 1st. And then as we move from Sunday into our Tuesday, October 3rd, the high pressure system begins to shift over the Great Lakes, while the low pressure system weakens as it hits that wall. And that's really why this system is not going to necessarily make it into the plains, and why the heat is going to continue from there eastward. So let's time this out day by day with your heat tracker. Here we go into your Thursday afternoon. This is your September 28th, the highs. Looking at temperatures well into the 80s and 90s here in the south central plains, but notice we're still pretty comfortable with plenty of 70s and 60s to go around there up towards portions of Minnesota and the Dakotas. But as we go into your Friday, these temperatures are going to make their way on up closer to 80 there into portions of southern South Dakota. Still manageable, but still getting above average at this point, with plenty of 90s down towards the south. Notice how this begins to expand as we go into your weekend, and by the time we're starting October, we've got mid 80s here into all the way on up to the Canadian border for us, with at least some low 80s there for sure. International Falls, Minnesota, you could be near 80 degrees, and the 80-degree temperatures are going to begin to spread eastward as well as we go towards next week. Of course, it's going to be the hottest the further south you go, even though it's actually technically closer to average, just seasonally, for it to be near 95 in a place like Dallas. Here we go. You can see some 85-degree readings now moving towards the Ohio Valley as we head towards the middle of next week, and eventually this is going to turn into some temperatures near 90 as maybe a front type setup sets up, and we'll watch that closely down the line. But this is what that looks like on your Climate Prediction Center temperature outlook for October 3rd through October 7th. You can see pretty much one of the deepest maroon shades you can see, going from portions of Wisconsin all the way on over to the New York area, keeping it cooler than average by a little bit on the west coast. But this heat dome again is what's winning out overall in the temperature anomaly pattern over the course of the next week or even 2 weeks. So let's take a look at the temperature tracking using radar Omega this time, and you can see again there's some of those white colors. This is where you're indicating some of these 90-degree readings, but also I want to point out the contrast with some of those blue colors. This is where we've got some 40, maybe even down to 30-degree readings entering the Mountain West at this time. So really some very stark contrast between these two areas, and we're going to continue to see this heat build up over the plains. But again, it's these areas here in the portions of Idaho, Montana that are unseasonably cool. And remember, these areas are where it's cooler this time of the year anyway, so this is going to be in the 30s for sure, and definitely some 20s will sink on down into some of those mountaintops for sure, as this makes its way and that low pressure system sinks southward. Now let's focus back on over the heat. You can see some of these readings really just building northward as a result of that clockwise flow around the high pressure system. You can see these lines I'm drawing out really anywhere in the deeper red shades. That's where you're looking at least 80 degrees. Some of these these grayish colors and then turning into the whites, that's where you're talking about at least 85 to 95. This is some intense heat that we're talking about, especially for this time of the year. It was a hot summer over this part of the country, and we don't need any more heat, and unfortunately we're getting it right now, and it's going to last for a little while. And again, you can see that border with some of the cooler 40s, 50s there in the west, and at night those temperatures really cool on down quite a bit there along the west coast. Now in terms of your dew point tracking, most of our moisture, at least for now, is confined into portions of Florida and the Gulf and southeast coast. Now there is a little bit of moisture up into the Ohio Valley with the low pressure system that's been cut off from the jet stream for a little while now, and that's going to continue to linger around over the course of the next few days as that system tries to produce more severe weather. But I paused this for you here on the first day of October. I like sitting here on the first day of October because I like talking about the new month getting not too far out. You can see we've got these dew points really in these blue shades. That's where you're talking about dew points of around 60 or so, and you can see we've actually got some of that making its way on up into the northern plains, and I'll show you why the models are showing that in a moment. But notice the moisture surge into Texas as well, and you can see these dew points are pretty elevated all the way through the plains with at least some 50s and 60s. Again, a little abnormal for this time of the year to see that build up, but not with a high pressure system like this sitting overhead. And also notice some of this moisture sinking southeastward out of the Pacific. Well, you don't see that directly affecting the dew points there on the west coast. That's definitely why there's been so much moisture in that area. So I want to take a very close look and really sit on these models for a little bit. Again, here's that low pressure system that is really weak, but still strong enough to produce some isolated to scattered severe weather. We saw that for today, this evening. We've got that severe threat over the Ohio Valley as I filmed this on your Wednesday. But nonetheless, we've also got this boundary that's been here a while and will continue to be here along the east coast and especially impacting Florida as it curls around through that area. Here we go towards your September 28th, and now entering your September 29th time frame. Again, just a couple days out as I'm filming this, and through the Dakotas into Minnesota, we might get a quick little clipper-like system to move on through. This is the southern end of a low-pressure system that you're actually seeing up there in Canada. Look at how that's moving on up through that central Canadian area. As it continues moving northeast, it drags that with it. Wouldn't be shocked if we got a few isolated severe storms dragging along the north-central tier of the country with that, but overall things dry in the plains, a little bit wet on the west coast, and a little bit wet along the east and southeast coast as well. Overall, though, we're pretty tame with no major systems to talk about. One other thing I did want to play back and show you here is this system working its way towards the northeastern region. Look at this. Here we go into as we start your weekend, we're going to see some rainfall pushing on into that area. And yes, I know we've had some pretty unpleasant times with the remnants of Lee and then Ophelia impacting different parts of the mid-Atlantic and northeast. Notice you can even see how these systems are riding up and over the high pressure system as I play that back. But eventually down the line, as we get a few days in towards October here, that's when it's looking like the potential for a system to try and start making its way actually out of the west coast and into the plains, and that's why our precipitation outlooks have been indicative of some increased precipitation over the central parts of the country, because a front is expected to develop about in the 5 to 10 day range, and that could be enough to spark off not only some severe storms but some very heavy rain and flooding as it pushes that high pressure system very slowly to the east, but uses the heat from it to work against it. But look at how the flows would bring in that southerly moisture. That's what I would worry about for dew points to really move up towards the north with the clockwise and counterclockwise flows from those two systems combining together. And boom, there you have it. Here we go towards your October 4th, and this is the European model really indicating a front that could go once again, just like we saw a few days ago, all the way down towards the Gulf Coast and all the way up towards the Great Lakes, push east. But we could see multiple of these in a short period of time, as this pattern is really not just going to open it up for one system, but two or more. And that's why this needs to be monitored closely down the line. I hate saying monitored closely a lot, but I do like to watch these patterns, and you need to watch them too, so that's why you should stick here and go ahead and subscribe. But anyway, you can see here we go 5 to 15 days out. That's where I would watch the plains for some isolated severe weather, and some of that to shift eastward towards the Great Lakes region. Again, this is not set in stone, but it is definitely a pattern that is looking more and more likely using all of the models that we're seeing, and eventually that would push that high pressure eastward, but not before bringing some heat to the east coast. Now, here we go, your October 3rd through 7th precipitation outlook. Not extremely above average across the plains, but yes, above average. Again, the heat would make it, that heat dome would make it drier here into the northeast. The reason we're not really seeing anything there in the southeast, that's where we have the potential for some long-term weak tropical entities. We'll watch that. But again, we're not looking at anything too major, but definitely the heat being the main concern.